Water is a fundamental requirement of life. Without it, survival is impossible. In developed nations, you and I consume water like we breathe air, without a moment's thought, but to many, it is rapidly becoming a scarce resource. When we look at the world, we see an overwhelming amount of blue, 75% to be exact. With the majority of the planet being covered in water, how can it possibly run scarce? Well, although most of the Earth is made up of water, almost all of it is salt water. Unfortunately, we cannot consume salt water because it would leave us severely dehydrated. We would have to urinate more water than we drank to get rid of the excess salt. Thus, we need to rely on fresh water for our survival. This is where the shortage kicks in. Only 3% of the Earth's water is freshwater, and with 2/3 of it being frozen in glaciers, we are left with only 1% to nourish the global population. The United Nations defines water scarcity as the point at which the supply of fresh water is insufficient to the point where it cannot maintain the requirements of a specific region. But to understand the global water requirements, we need to understand what the requirements of a specific region related to water are. Some examples include individuals, families, and communities not having enough fresh water to drink, cook with, and use for cleaning purposes, farmers lacking adequate water to grow their crops, rivers and streams running so low that fish are not able to survive, natural land masses becoming so dry that they can no longer support wildlife that lives there, developed regions lacking the water needed to maintain the lifestyle to which a community has become accustomed, which may involve golf courses, lush lawns, ornamental fountains, and other non-essential uses of water. The global freshwater crisis, then, is a result of rising water scarcity, where communities lack sufficient fresh water to fulfill the basic requirements of life. In the worst-case scenario, a full-out global freshwater crisis could have devastating consequences. To begin, let's look at the global food supply. Agriculture already accounts for 70% of our freshwater consumption. With a global population expected to grow to 9.6 billion by 2050, it will be increasingly difficult to ensure a steady supply of food, leading to food shortages and even starvation. Another problem lies in the supply and quality of water itself. Water shortage and poor water quality increases the risk for disease. The World Health Organization and UNICEF reported that every 90 seconds a child dies from a water-related disease. Most of these deaths occur in third world countries, but could affect us all very soon. And finally, this crisis could cause a global conflict. The UN has identified 476 transboundary sources of fresh water. Given that only 1% of the world's water is freshwater, scarcity may lead to fighting between nations. Remember, while the 1 billion people without fresh and safe sources of water may not include you right now, the UN predicts that by 2030, almost half of the world's population will experience extreme water stress if the correct measures are not taken. So with all of this talk of the global water crisis, what are we doing to try and combat it? Given that the growing human population is one of the strains causing the global water crisis, a government-level solution could provide incentives to limit population growth rates. However, the projected 2050 population would have to fall from 9.6 billion to 8.5 billion for any significant stress reductions to occur. Since the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change predicts a major decrease in the overall freshwater supply as a result of rising global temperatures, the global water crisis is clearly linked to climate change. Another possible solution focuses on the reduction of greenhouse gases. For example, Canada and the US have established a clean energy dialogue, which involves reducing greenhouse gases through 3 key areas: clean energy R&D, carbon capture and storage, and building a more efficient electricity grid using clean and renewable energy. The individual person can do their part by being more aware of their carbon footprint. For instance, biking or walking instead of driving to a nearby location could significantly reduce the production of greenhouse gases. Water contamination is another factor that worsens the global water crisis as it reduces access to potable water. The main contaminants include salt, fertilizer and pesticide residues, and human pathogens, resulting in over 1 billion people lacking access to potable water. Governments can enact stronger protection policies to ensure that water is not polluted as often, and can encourage effective cleaning or filtering of bodies of water where contamination is prevalent. Increasing the desalination of seawater through increasing either the number or capacity of energy-efficient desalination plants is also a solution that should be considered. The individual person can make a big difference simply by being mindful of their waste disposal. If everyone disposes of their waste properly, we can ensure that our water is contaminated as little as possible. The most important change we can all make right now is to raise awareness. We can educate others on the potential impacts of the crisis and educate ourselves on how we can change our lifestyles. By spreading this message on your social media, we will come one step closer to overcoming this crisis. We can each act consciously to change our lifestyles. While it may seem small individually, our changes can add up to make real change.